Good day, viewers. Welcome back. This is David Oliverio, the Preaching Humanist. That is I. I'm going to discuss important topic. Should we build a secular community, secular humanist, atheist, whatever you want to call it? Let's say secular. Number one, let's talk about what it is first. What is it and who is it for? It is a democratic community of unbelievers. And when I mean unbelievers, I'm talking about atheists, comprised of atheists, agnostics, and secular humanists who long, and yes, long for and miss community and who share beliefs, values, and have a similar worldview. There are many people out there that miss that community, and we long for it because we are a social species. Who else is it for? Well, I would say it's for the exiled believers. And what is an exile? And a person in exile? It's the state of voluntary or forced absence from one's own country, home, and I'm going to throw in there church. Most people have not been forced out. Some have of the church settings, but most have been voluntary. They've come to this understanding on their own. They've left the church. They've left belief in the supernatural, in a God, and they're in exile. I tell you what, I know this to be true. Why? Because I talk to them quite often. When we set up booths and we do our activism on the weekends for the atheist community of Austin, we have several people that would identify as exile believers who just recently let go of God belief and they're lonely, they're looking for community, and we invite them in. So they're out there. Now let me tell you what a secular community is not. It is not Joseph Stalin or Chairman Mao communist atheism. Believe it or not, this does happen. I have people ask me this question often. A few weeks ago at Lady Bird Lake, holding up our atheist and secular humanist signs, I had a gentleman, an older gentleman, probably my age, approach us. And he saw the atheist sign I was holding up. And he had a Russian accent. I can't do accents very well. I can't even do my own, which is Italian, so I won't even attempt it. But he pointed at the atheist sign. He said, no, that's not good. And I asked him why. He goes, I'm from Russia, and I've seen what it does. So I had to explain to him that this is organic atheism, much like Western Europe, the Scandinavian countries and so forth. It's non-coercive. It's not communism, okay? It is also not a religion by definition. A religion is the service, the worship, and the belief in a God or the supernatural. In other words, people who adhere to a belief in a God, they go to church, they believe in the supernatural. We, as atheists, call them religious. Now, we don't have any dogma. So there's no dogma, there's no gods, okay? So it's not a religion. Now, why should we attempt? This is my personal opinion. Why should we attempt to build a secular humanist community? Number one, I've already mentioned, to house the exiles, to have a community, a place where they can come to because they miss and they long for the activities that church once provided for them. And I will admit, they do it pretty damn good. Let's admit that churches have that part together. They do deal with the community well. They do have a wonderful place for human beings to meet, to socialize, and to have friends and places and activities for their children, their husbands, their wives, their family, and so forth. So it's a place to house the exiles. Also, why should we attempt to build a secular community? Because of the benefits of community. Some people would call this collectivism, group, meeting the group needs over the individuals. Individual needs are important, group needs are important, and so forth. It's better in a community. That is a benefit of community. Goals in communities are achieved more effectively and more efficiently in a group. Not all the time, but most of the time. I can use myself as an example. I was a lone atheist activist for many, many years out there doing activism, talking to believers in churches, out in parks, wherever I had the opportunity. But now, since I find and have found a group of people that share the same passion I do for activism and building a secular community and so forth, it's better. Why? 2 can be better than 1. 4, better than 2 sometimes, and 8, better than 4, and so forth. So let's talk about some goals of community. I would call this secular humanism in action. Let us not forget that wonderful philosophy, that progressive philosophy of life without supernatural beliefs that affirms our ability and responsibility as humans to lead ethical lives for the good of humanity. Well, what is that, David? That is secular humanism. We are atheists, but atheism is just the absence of belief in a God. That's it. What do we do with our atheism? Most of us, not all, most of us take and adhere to that beautiful philosophy of secular humanism, being good without God and helping to make the world better without supernatural beliefs. So, goals of a secular humanist community, secular humanism in action. Number 1, meeting the needs of the group, obviously. Not just the group, individual needs, local needs, and world community needs. No xenophobism here, people. I like to talk to people on the far right. They wear their little "Make America Great Again" or "God Bless America." I always ask them, why don't you pray to your God that you believe in, that God blesses the whole world? Why does it just have to be America or USA, right? So we want all people to have good lives. What we can do in secular humanist communities, we can exercise benevolence and philanthropy. We do some of that already here. But if we grow a bigger community, we can do more for the local community with benevolence, philanthropy, visiting elderly people, the sick, the dying, the homeless, the hungry, feeding the hungry, Meals on Wheels, food banks, etc. There's so many things we could do better in collectivism or better in a group of people for other human beings. Also, what else can we do? What are the goals of a community? Good old activism. Now you're talking. I like all this stuff, but activism gets me really, really fired up. So we can stand with and support the church-state separation, obviously. As a group, we can stand up and support anti-racism. We can stand and support, obviously, the promotion of science and education. That's very important nowadays, especially where we're losing people in the community that actually believe in facts and data and science and reason. We tend to be, as a species, going the other way. We want to counter that and push for science and education and reason. We want to stand and support gender equality, LGBT rights, and, of course, we want atheist activism, going out like we do on the weekends, normalizing atheism and talking to believers. So these are the things that I believe can be done more effectively and more efficiently in a community. Now, let me tell you before I close, and I have a few others join me here in a moment to discuss this topic. Let me tell you what my vision and dream is. Being a former Christian preacher years and years ago, most of you know this, in the 70s and 80s, we had communities of believers, right? We wanted to make the world better. Well, that didn't really work because quantitative data and evidence shows that secular communities are healthier communities. We know that. So my dream and vision, when I drive around the city of Austin, I see these big old buildings called churches, right? They have the name of the church on their big marquee and their sign, and some churches do wonderful things for the community. And I like that part of the church. But we can do the same thing. I envision seeing buildings, large buildings, a community, I hate to say it, but bureaucracies or business, that's what they are, that's what churches even are, of an organized system of people together making a positive change in the world. We can call that secular humanism, built up of atheists, agnostics, and so forth. That's my vision and dream. I vision a building with a sign, Atheist Community of Austin. The churches do it, we should do it. Why? Because it's all about equality. Christians are out there doing their stuff. We should have a building as well. And sure, will the sign be vandalized? Probably so. But what better publicity can we get, right? If our signs are vandalized. So I really would love to see these communities springing up. We have them already, but let's work to build these communities of good, moral, secular humanist people that have zero belief in gods. We can make the world much better, and we can achieve goals together as a team much more effectively and efficiently. Good day, viewers. Welcome back. David Oliverio, the Preaching Humanist here, and Andrew's with me again.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew.
How are we doing today?
And look who we have here today. We have the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. Yay, and Jamie's with us today. So, Jamie, did you just break a record here?
Well, I think I might be about to break a record that I wasn't even thinking about, because I got called in to be on Truth Wanted, or yesterday's, 2 days ago's episode of Truth Wanted, which airs Fridays at 6 p.m. Central. And then I'm here recording this, which actually won't be released this week.
Right.
So you're watching from the future.
Future, right.
A little bit of behind-the-scenes movie magic there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then later today, I'll be on my show. So 3 show recordings in 1 week. It might be an ACA record, maybe not. But,
We might have to check that out and see. You might be holding a world record here. Should get you a trophy for that.
world record, most ACA shows.
Woohoo, Jamie Boone.
Until somebody breaks it, there's
Yeah.
like 9 different shows now. So
Yeah.
that's the goal to shoot for. See if somebody can get on all 9 shows.
Oh, is that how many we have? Why don't you go over that, by the
Yeah.
way?
So we have the classics that have been here forever. So not just the show of the Preaching Humanist over here, but we also have the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Godless Bitches, the Nonprofits, Parenting Beyond Belief, Truth Wanted, the Atheist Interviews. Oh no, I'm gonna get called out for this one.
Did you say nonprofits?
I did say Nonprofits.
Godless Bitches?
I did not say Godless Bitches. It's one of my favorites.
Sorry.
Watched an episode this morning.
Yeah.
It's very good. It's back for those of you that are old fans.
That's 8.
Secular sexuality?
Secular Sexuality
9.
with our good friend there. Yeah, and that
Right, there she
is
is.
all 9. There
Hey,
she
Megan.
is.
Hey, Megan.
And I'm going to stay in this booth as long as I can to not face the reprisals of forgetting to mention her show.
She's not giving you, she's smiling. She's not giving you a dirty
Yeah, I need to just memorize them in order and be...
You got a lot on your mind there,
Yeah.
Jamie.
And I think this is the newest one, right? They just debuted.
Parenting Beyond Belief.
They debuted last week, and so if you're an atheist or secular parent and you have questions, I know I do.
Yeah.
I could probably fill up an entire episode with just asking them my questions. So that's a
You
cool
should
idea.
consider doing that. I mean, they're going for callers. That's hosted
Yeah.
by Claire Wollner, and there's actually there's almost in 2 entire sets of different hosts, because there's a lot of parents that stepped up that wanted to say, not my kids, basically, but also professionals. So Jan Heimlich is author of Breaking Their Will and on the board of the Child Friendly Faith Project, and there's a lot of things going on. I won't dominate.
No, it's good.
your
I
show
like
with
hearing that.
That's good to know.
cross-promotion, but-
I was talking about collectivism. I don't know if we all like that word, but yeah, it's a whole community working
Yes.
together.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this.
It's like
Yeah.
we're a commune, and we're into communism.
Ooh,
No, wait a minute.
You would not believe how many people affiliate us with communism, and we have to explain to them that's not what we're trying to build here. Joseph Stalin communism,
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought Reagan wasn't our president anymore.
Yeah.
So we were moving on beyond.
We've progressed. I hope we progressed.
Yeah, I hope we'll move from there.
We're going to find out here soon, yeah. So let's get into the topic. I gave a episode on should we and can we and so forth build a secular community. Very important to me. And I don't know about the name yet. What do you think, Jamie? I say secular. If we say atheist community, I don't know if they...
Well, I think that you would have far fewer religious conflicts if everyone was an atheist. I feel very confident in saying if there wasn't religion, then there wouldn't be religious conflicts. But I feel like saying a secular society is probably better, and it's certainly a much more realistic goal, because it's a lot easier to show people that you shouldn't have theocracy, and that religions, particularly the personal practice, the way that an individual prays, which building they go to on whatever their favorite day of the week is something that should not be the subject of government, and it certainly shouldn't be the subject of, widespread social upheaval, right? So there are societies, for example, that don't really have a legal provision to, for example, kill atheists or secularists, where that happens anyway. So in Bangladesh and Pakistan, these are not good places to be, even though it's not technically the government doing it. It's like Jim Crow in the South. There wasn't a law that said if you were black and you said something polite to a white woman, you would get killed. It was just what happened. So a secular society where the equivalent thing for religion doesn't happen, I think, is a good goal to facilitate.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. You got anything to add to that before we move on?
No, that's all good. That's pretty self-explanatory. And when we're out there with our signs, the ones that get the most agreement are the keep church and state separate. Yeah. Almost everybody is down with that. Even a lot of religious folks. And so, that I guess that is the biggest priority. Yeah.
It's still hard for Christians to understand that we are so much like them. I mean, we understand we're just human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all the same. We require the same thing. And I've had so many Christians, when I tell them we're building a community of unbelievers, and they go like, what do y'all do? I mean, what do you mean, what do we do? We're the same things you do. We just take out the supernatural. We do everything else the same.
We don't have hymns, so if you're going to miss out on those if you like that. There's no hymn books.
That can change. We need music.
Yeah. Hey, let's get a piano in here, man.
But also, there are a ton of songs that don't mention God. So.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. About important things like love and relationship and all the things that all humans share. Yeah. So let's talk about why we should try to build a big and more of these societies that are for unbelievers. Let's talk about some reasons why. Why do you think we should do this?
Well, I feel like a society, whether it's built entirely around non-believers or not, is much more likely to not persecute on religious grounds if it's set up to do that, right? Obviously, the government of the United States is founded on secular principles, among them the separation of government and religion. We know this. Thomas Jefferson wrote about this. That's where the expression, a wall of separation between church and state, comes from.
Danbury Baptist and all that,
Yeah. So the laws were there and the tradition was there. One of the things that you're seeing that's troubling is that those laws and those traditions are being ignored and pushed aside by people who are Christian dominionists, who have tendencies towards religious theocracy. And I think that, I oftentimes feel very passionately about America and feel like that's a betrayal of our traditions. But the thing that I will say is it's not enough to build a secular government because governments are beholden to the society that they're in. So it's critical to build a respect amongst people in society. And so, religious conflicts on an international scale, even that aside, internal conflicts on a religious and cultural scale abound when you don't have mutual respect and an understanding.
Beautiful.
So would you say, I was just thinking, that wouldn't it be a good end goal to make it so that atheist community wouldn't even be necessary? Atheist community would be redundant because the reason that we have to offer the option of an atheist community is because a lot of people, when they come out atheist, because of the bias against non-religion that's dominant in our culture, they often will get excluded or they'll lose their social base, and they need someplace to go. And hopefully we get to the point where that won't be necessary, where where being an unbeliever is just a normal thing.
Yeah, like when I talk to Christians, sometimes I go, why? You believe in God. I'm always asking, why? But we could be more like the secularized countries in Western Europe or the Norwegians, Scandinavians. And I've talked to people from there. I've had a few clients from there. And they've said, we don't even have to use the word atheist over there.
Yeah.
Don't we have to do it here, though?
Yes. Yeah. it's kind of an unspoken assumption, particularly depending on which region you travel to in this country, right? There's places in this country where it is considered, and statistically, it may be accurate to meet someone and say, what church do you go to?
Yeah.
Right? As an assumed thing. In the same way that you might ask, like, what do you do for a living? Right? Is sort of the assumed, based on a person's age, that they've have a job rather than that they're retired. Right? The difference being that there's no offense paid to a retired person, and it's not a giant assumption of their character to assume that they work, right? Whereas, I assume that you believe in the same kind of things that I do.
Yeah.
And that's what I see as, the in-group.
Right.
As you're saying that, the first thing that popped in my mind was the infamous news moment when Wolf Blitzer was interviewing the woman after the hurricane, right?
Yeah.
And she's like sheepishly, actually, I'm an atheist.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was classic.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the first time he asked, she avoided the question and turned to her child to try and get to the next question. And then he asked again. It was like, so do you thank God that you're there? And she goes, well, actually, I'm an atheist. And he was good, he was a good sport about it. However, my understanding is that later, I think it was that week, there was reporting on a different news channel, Fox News. You may have heard of it.
Fair and balanced.
That
Wink,
suggested that, that was a plant, and it was all planned in advance. Which,
okay, yeah.
I mean, no, it wasn't. I've met her. She's fantastic. She actually started.
You met her. What city was this in?
She came here actually because she was given the Impact Atheist Award by the ACA. It's for an atheist that's made a significant impact.
Wow, beautiful.
In the society.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah,
darn.
It was a year ago, and then I think she's gone on to start an organization. Hopefully, there'll be some information on the lower third about that. But before we get off on that trail too much, it is that infamous moment where it's assumed that it's this nice thing to ask someone like, are you praying? Or, we're sending our thoughts and prayers. Very, very, very recently, I think it was in response to a lot of the school shootings that had happened.
Yeah.
There was a response to stop sending me thoughts and prayers, particularly from Congress, instead of passing laws. And I think that even parts of mainstream society started to realize that, you're taking the time to say thoughts and prayers, but if you have the opportunity to do something else, do that. Which is very interesting because I think there's a lot of Christians in this country that make a big deal of that publicly, right? They're on the news and they say, this is a Christian country. Most of us are some kind of Christian. They don't realize that other people that call themselves Christians don't necessarily think of God the way that they do, right? It's not anyone else that calls himself Christian is exactly like me, because there are a lot of cultural Christians or casual Christians that they go to church for the community because that's the place they can get it.
Absolutely.
And so they get lumped in with this large group of things. And so being able to build a secular society where there are just community centers, whether we have to call them atheist community centers or not, is, I think, an important aspect of this.
I'm glad you said that, because let's go into this part of it. So the benefits, I talked about it on my little previous episode about this topic, is that there's so many benefits of achieving goals more effectively and more efficiently in groups. So personally, I think in a group, 2 is better than 1 for achieving a lot of goals. 4 is better than 2. 8's better than 4. I think we know that. So in a secular society, we can still do the same things for the local community, right? Individual needs, group needs, all the things that churches have done, and I'm going to admit this, they do that pretty damn good. As far as the community. And they've got that down.
They've had thousands of years of practice.
They've had about
perfecting
2,000 years.
If they weren't good at doing that, their congregants would go to the church down the street. So there's a competitiveness for how welcoming your community is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we can achieve these goals. I think we could do it much better in a community. So we can never forget that wonderful drive or that wonderful philosophy that most of us have as atheists. Not all, but most, of secular humanism, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing we can't forget about. So I would call that secular humanism in action, going out and doing things in a community. And I guess we're already doing some of that already at the ACA, right?
Yes, we are. So we do a lot of community service. Most of it is organized by Phil Session,
Yes.
who's the
Thank you, Phil.
Vice President at the moment. And he does a remarkable amount of community service and work on that front. He does a lot for the ACA and a lot in Austin. He also does a lot in San Antonio. So Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless is active. I think it's twice a month. The Ramp Project, the Texas Ramp Project that we partner with, which builds ramps for people in wheelchairs that need ramps that otherwise wouldn't have them. And I mean, the amount of work that he does is tremendous.
Yeah. It's really good for believers to see this because, again, the stereotype of people like us who are atheists and is very different than reality, right?
Yeah.
We're not nihilists. Most of us aren't nihilists anyway.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
We believe in something.
Yeah, we do. You don't believe in anything. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh. I believe in most of the same things that you do. Yeah. Gravity is real. Planes fly.
Yeah.
It's just what you think is higher up in the sky that I don't believe in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how are these people going to know this unless we tell them? That's where our activism comes in. It's good to get out there and put a face on it. So I do think, and I'm sure you guys agree, that we can achieve these goals and make a difference in the world, a positive change in a group, right?
Yeah.
Now, some atheists, and I know some of them are my friends, wonderful people, but they're not very attracted, or they find this very unappealing to be a part of a large community that identifies as atheists or secular humanists because it's too churchy.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah,
Ever run into people like that?
Well, it depends on what aspect of it would make it churchy. If you go to a meetup group on a common interest, is that churchy? You know, I see it more like that, you know.
It can be.
Well, then don't do the things that would make it churchy.
Yeah.
Are we doing anything here that makes it churchy?
Not really. I mean, we have a lot of events on Sunday. That just happens to be a day that we have free.
It's the weekend. People have free time.
Yeah, it's the weekend. People have free time, and a lot of your religious friends don't have free time. So get together with your non-religious friends.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, we have a communal meal, right? If you count anything that a church does as churchy, then providing childcare is churchy. Or going on a retreat.
Daycare centers, that's
or
secular. Yeah.
Daycare centers, potlucks,
Yeah.
drinking small amounts of wine at a time. All of these things can be considered churchy, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing them.
Right.
I like wine.
And a lot of people, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I get this often. Well, you're just describing a church, and you learned this from God, or it's because you were once a Christian, you learned how to be moral, you learned how to care about other people because you were once a Christian. And I get that. In fact, we go on Saturday mornings to feed homeless. You knew that, and Phil knows that. And before we go out and do our activism, and two people came to me. That guy named David, you were down there with me that one day, who sets up that Christian group, and he got a little heated with us, and he had that debate with us. I don't know if that was you, but he told me, he said, David, I've been praying for you, and I want to warn you that God spoke to me about you, and I want to warn you, you've got to come back to Jesus, that type of guy, right? 2 weeks later, he came to me and apologized. And he said, David, I want to apologize for being rude. And I was thinking about you today. And I thought to myself, David, you and the other atheists out here are really good guys. You're really nice people. And I said, well, people are people. Doesn't matter if you're a Christian or an atheist. They're good and bad in every group, yada, yada, right? But he made a remark. He said, but the reason you're good is because you were once a Christian. The reason you come out here to feed homeless people and you talk about your community that you say you're building that is more secular, you're just doing it because you learned it from Christianity. Do you ever get that?
A little bit, right? So I get that more on the show, on Talk Heathen, the show that I host, than in other places. And certainly on the nonprofits, when we're reviewing sort of things that apologists say, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I don't get that as much in my personal life because, I don't do as much on the street activism as you do.
You would get it if you went out with us.
I would get it a lot more if I went out with you.
Oh,
yeah, and I get a little bit of that, but it tends to be, not from people on the street, but from people I know. And so they tend to be more soft-spoken about it, of, you're just on another path that God has set for you, and, you're doing good things, that must be God's work.
Yeah.
I'm sure eventually you'll make it back to the church. No, but I thank you for acknowledging I'm doing good things, I suppose, but I don't see myself doing good things and that leading me to...
Jamie, have you ever thought to ask them, okay, if this is God's work, why wouldn't God just do it himself so we wouldn't have to?
Yeah. Sort of like, why is God shirking his work out on us? You've encouraged me to, we encourage people to have a good work ethic, but we don't demand that of God. And so...
Yeah.
Here's something else, guys, we got to talk about. Activism, one of our favorite things, right? So there are different ways to do this thing of activism. Now, Christians and their churches, they do activism. Hell, I'm a former activist. I'm an activist now, but I was a Christian activist, right?
Yeah.
Obviously a preacher. So we have activists too, and this is what we explain to believers. So we can do activism as well. It's not only atheist activism, which I would describe as normalizing atheism, which we do. That's the number one goal. But there's other things we should be doing. And the man's name who came from American Atheist, Jim, was it Jim?
Yeah, Jim Helton.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's the outreach coordinator.
Yeah, that was an awesome talk he gave, and I agree 100% that he was mentioning that when there are activist groups out supporting equality and social issues and all, the atheists should be out there as well, right? Standing and supporting. So we can do that as well. That's very important, I think, to get out there. So I do think we can do this better in a group rather than some lone person out there. If we just have a group and a community of people that go out and support these places and these causes.
Yeah. And the ACA does and should continue to do what it can to support, in particular, the activism you do here, at least in part on our behalf.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and what I will say is it's an interesting thing that came up when Jim Helton was here, because I got to actually have longer, more substantial one-on-one conversations with him. One of the things that he pointed out is that he often goes to the press to get the headlines and to bring the pressure and to raise awareness of these things. And there's a headline that he's particularly proud of, that I think we should all be particularly proud of, that's when equality is under attack, atheists show up. Right? Yes. There's bumper stickers for this. I want one, and I don't put bumper stickers on my car, but
I just saw there's one out there on the table.
Yeah, there is one out there on the table. I might snag it. And it's things like that make people realize that atheists aren't, for people my age, they would say, a bunch of angsty people living in their mother's basement with neck beards that are just mad and trying to take away something that brings people comfort, right? And so it's important on two fronts to talk to them about how describing faith traditions as something that just brings people comfort is not accurate, and how saying that is all that we do is talk about religion is also not accurate. We do community service and we do outreach to help people understand that atheists are people too.
Absolutely.
And it is a point that needs making. So.
That's what, to me, I think when we go out in our activism on the weekends, and when I talk to believers all the time, I mean, I could tell my clients are always begging for more stories because I'm out talking to people all the time. And Christians are always talking and saying, I'm blessed and blessed. And of course, I question them, and I tell them I'm an atheist, and I've never been happier. I'm in a healthy relationship, and it just blows them away because the stereotype is so wrong that they have of us. And that's why we do what we do. We're making it easier for all the closeted atheists out there that are too frightened to lose their jobs. Like the two girls at San Antonio that came to us, remember? They're right there ready to leave the Catholic Church, and I asked them, this is on video. You're going to see it.
Oh, yeah.
And we interviewed them, and I asked them, what is holding you and keeping you in the church from letting it all go. And guess what the two fears were? Number one, losing their family and hell, of course, those two things. So there's so many people right there. And if they just knew that there were a group of people just like them, good people that do good things in the community. And the only difference is, well, we think a little differently too. little
differently.
Yeah, a little differently. But we do the same thing. We love people. We have community. We like to be around other people. We're happy. We're social species.
Yep.
And we do the same thing Christians do, just without the supernatural. And I tell believers that all the time, and most of them are blown away because they've never, ever met people like us. That's why I like to wear my atheist T-shirts as often as I can.
Friendly neighborhood atheist.
I mean, everywhere I go, well, not everywhere. Kristen gets a little bit embarrassed sometimes. So it's like, oh, here he goes again. But anyway.
I think, it's like the popular perception of the A-word atheist is that we're out to destroy and tear down and criticize, but really we're out to build and grow and progress humanity, So it's a positive, not a negative,
That's a good point. Absolutely. So I want to talk about, before we close here, I gave you my vision and my dream of this thing. I've had this for years and years and years. Now I've found a group of people, and they're all around here, that share the same thing. So, Jamie, what would you say as the president of ACA? What do you see, what direction do you see the ACA going? And some of the goals that you have for the atheist community of Austin?
So one of the things that the atheist community of Austin does very well, and that we're certainly leaning on, is production, the production of all kinds of media. And so I've said, do more of that and do a larger variety of it. And so we have secular sexuality and parenting beyond belief, and we relaunched Godless Bitches so that it's not just, we had the primary show that everyone knows us for is The Atheist Experience, and it's Colin, and we just talked, and the show just talks about, is there a good reason to believe this? I believe the answer is no. I think that the two of you do as well. But we weren't addressing, someone said, the whole human, right? So parenting, secular sexuality, issues in public policy that need to be addressed from, a feminist perspective and from a general perspective are incredibly important. And we've done a lot of that, and I want to keep doing that. But the reason that we do that plays perfectly into this question that you've asked me, and thank you for asking me this question, is that it raises awareness in society, not just among non-believers, but among believers as well, that non-believers, as you've said, can be good people, and given the opportunity, would be, right? Providing people the opportunity to have a community where they don't have to set aside, because there's people that go to church that go, well, I go to church, it's just, it's a thing that I do, it's a thing I'm getting into because I'm retired or getting older, that don't need to do that and that may very well not want to do that. Social clubs have existed for, 1,000 years or more. And there's no reason that in a country where the society by default assumes, oh, some kind of Christian is the norm, or maybe you're one of those other two religions I've heard of, where in that society you can't just have a group of people that have thought about this question and come to the conclusion, I don't believe, that has a community, a place to be, right? We use this building as a community center. I would like to improve this building. I think eventually we're going to get a larger building. And I feel like this being a kind of beacon to show people you can have local community, and these are ways that you can talk about these issues so that people can build in their own backyard, in their own cities, something that looks like this community center, something that looks like this community. So in part, where I'm going to put most of my weight in, a lot of my weight in the next coming months is local events. So it's effectively, there are people that I'm thinking of, those people are atheists, and they don't have a good way of having a local community in the way that a Baptist would. You move to a new city, you don't have a church, someone says, oh, what church do you go to? You say, I haven't found one yet. They invite you that Sunday. Oh, we're going to have a potluck on Wednesday. Oh, cool. Let me introduce you to the pastor. You have an immediate set of friends. There is absolutely no reason why every secular humanist, every person that calls themselves agnostic, every person that calls themselves atheist cannot have the same thing. And I think the more that we work towards a country and society where that is not only a future possibility, but a current reality, the better off humanity will be.
Well said from our president. Awesome. I agree. And I was about to say, preach it.
And the beauty of being upfront and defining it as secular or atheist is that it tells people that, hey, if you are secular or atheist, agnostic, here's a place where you can go and you can say the things, you can be open about your lack of faith and not worry that you're going to get judged or or excommunicated or anything like that.
Boy, that is so true. Yeah, it's a safe haven. Right? It's such a safe haven. When I was going through all this, looking for like-minded people, well, I've been an atheist for 29, 30 years, but I was in Waco waiting for my kids to go off to college, and they went off, 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, I can't remember. But once they were gone, I was able to move to Austin. And one of the main reasons I moved here, I've always liked Austin, but it was more of a place more conducive for people like us. I knew about that compared to Waco, right? Where there's a lot of religion, a lot of Christians. But it was very nice just to find people that associate with me and identify with me and have coincidental philosophies and worldview. Because as a personal trainer, half of my clients are Christian and the other half are atheists. We all get along, but some of them are very fundamentalist, and I'm walking on eggshells because it's my business too. So, but there's something about being around people. Obviously, Christians can attest to this. When you're around people where you share the same worldview and so forth, and values and all forth, it just feels good. And that's why one of the main reasons we do this, right, for community. Yeah.
For example, if you go to a more, Bible Belt kind of city or town, unlike Austin, and you're an atheist or non-believer and you go someplace to socialize with people, the just general non-church activities, even then the assumption is going to be that you're religious or that you have some sort of faith. And so it's nice to, if they have that option, they can go someplace where they don't have to worry about that assumption,
Yeah. We also may consider the fellow atheists that are not into community. And I don't want to demonize them because I've known people I've known for years that are atheists that really don't have that type of personality. I think it's genetic for some people, right? Some people are very introverted and they're happy. I've got an atheist friend I've known for years. He's a very happy individual, super smart, like 10 times smarter than me. I wish I could steal his IQ from him. When I trained him at his home, I'm always stealing his IQ when he's not looking. Yeah, I don't think he can do that, but I wish I could. But he's perfectly happy, alone, doing his work on his computer. He has a cat. He has a few friends, but he's very happy. But he's not really interested in coming to community. I don't want people like that to feel demonized either, right? Because this is not for everybody.
No, it's not. And I feel like one of the things that has been helpful for people that are introverted, that have been sort of dealing with this, because one of my closest friends, it's actually one of the people that I know has watched the atheist experience for years, has always lived in Austin, has always known it's in Austin, and has never showed up because they don't have the desire to. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine, right? It's part of the benefit of the shows is that you can watch them anywhere. It's the internet. And it's also, that's something that's beneficial for the person who is in the very small town, who doesn't yet have the means to move out, who's saving up, or move out of the city. It's a city of 1,000 people, and they feel entirely alone because everyone else goes to church and is hyper passionate about it, or it looks like it. And so they end up going to church feeling like the outcast. And when they can go home and watch a show like yours that talks about these issues, that talks about the need for community, they understand that someone else understands their needs.
I'm glad you brought that up. We got about 5 or 10 minutes because you guys have to get ready for your show coming up. Now, I think Eric is coming on with you. So back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, we would, my preacher buddies and I, we would attempt to send people out, just like in the book of Acts, right? To send them out to start new satellite churches like these big mega churches do. Yeah. So, Jamie, what do you think about, I'm sure you thought about this. I've never asked you this before. You're on the spot.
Okay.
So I envision this, and I kind of think you do too, but to maybe send or get other communities, because I meet some people from small rural towns around Texas that have nothing like this.
Yeah.
And the first thing I think about, oh my God, that'd be awesome to help them establish a community similar to this. There's no dogma or no senior pastor and authority, no authoritarianism here, but just helping them, because we're democracies, to help them define the right people to build it. That's kind of part of my goal and vision.
Like the ACW.
What's that?
Atheist Community of Waco.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Something like that.
ACV, Atheist Community of Valdosta.
Right.
Or Victoria.
Or Victoria. Right. So I entirely agree with that. And I think I can tell you the reason why it hasn't happened. One, until, the last, handful of decades in the United States, there hasn't been as large a push for the community aspect of groups of atheists. And two, you can go with a megachurch into a small town and know that there are adherents there and know that they will step in and check it out and feel, and have no second thoughts about walking into a church and seeing what it's about.
Right.
If you slap the word atheist on the front of a building and someone walks in there in a small town, that's something that sometimes they need to get nervous about, right? Sure. So the more that we find, probably through the internet and social networking and, probably an app that ends up being directed specifically at this, the ability to know, okay, so in this small town of 1,000 people, there are 15 that have expressly said, I don't believe, I want to have this sort of sense of community, right? And odds are after that, you're going to find another 10 or 20 that just haven't taken the time. And so, that's a huge part of a vision for the future of society, is the ability to just go somewhere and start a satellite.
Beautiful. I'm glad you said that. I knew we had never talked about this, or maybe we did. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Not at length, and that you share the same passion as I do, and I'm sure a lot of others who do too. But hell, we used to do it in the 70s and 80s, but like you said, it's a lot easier back then. I started 2 little churches, a couple of little assistants of mine. We just put a sign up, New Wine Christian Fellowship, put a little ad in the Waco paper, and I had like 20, 30 people. We went out and brought people in from the street. It was an easy. This is different. This is, to me, grassroots. Yeah. I think it is. I mean, it's been attempted with other groups, but I think we've got something here.
Yeah. It's interesting because the local groups that are secular will adopt different names, which is, again, it's fine, right? There's, the particular name of the community is less important to me.
Yes.
But they'll have a specific flavor, right? So there's groups in Houston that care more about going out and doing the social stuff, and they don't really care as much about, trying to host a speaker or being activists. And there's groups that just want to be activists that don't care as much about the community and that. And in my mind, well, you're in the same geographic region. You just pool your resources and get to know each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
And that's been kind of difficult because, atheists don't all have one God to bow down to and kneel to. We don't have a pope. We don't have a head pastor. We don't have that, well, I have to do this just because, and then after I get there, I like it thing, right? It's like the father talking to his son, oh, come on, get in the car, you're complaining now, but you'll have fun when you get there. To atheists the world over, it may not seem like the work is worth it or you agree with everyone, but you'll have fun when you get there. Yeah. It's time to build communities.
Well, we just don't have that authoritarianism.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't have dogma of church. You have to.
We don't have the indoctrination aspect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So that, and then we're dealing with free thinkers or cats versus dogs, right? I always say I hate to say this, people are going to take it the wrong way. Oh my gosh, I can't say Christians are more like dogs. I shouldn't say that, but versus cats. Cats are independent.
Send your hate mail to President Jamie.
I didn't mean that.
I was going to say loyal pack animals.
There we go. Thank you. Euphemism. I apologize. I think you know what I meant.
Based on their nature.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Man's best friend, that sort of thing.
There you go.
Is what he meant.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then free thinkers are more like cats. Is what
absolutely is what I'm trying to say.
And
yes.
what I was saying is, sure, by nature, dogs may congregate in groups, but if you get a large enough saucer of milk and enough fish, you get a pretty large group of cats as well.
Now they have to be multiplied, though. 2 loaves and 3, 4 fish.
No.
And you don't want them hissing at each other either.
Hissing, yeah. All right, guys. Well, you guys got to get ready for your show, so we're going to have to close this up. So, I think we had a lot of fun. And
I think it was very good, yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on. And I thought about who would I have.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome, yeah. And I thought, who would I have on besides my regular guys to discuss can we and should we and how can we and so forth building this community than the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. So I'm glad you came on. And we should have some more talks about this in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. Very important to all of us here.
Speaking of the future, we're going to have some interesting footage coming up as well of our actions out in the field. We're finally filming them. And so we've got a good couple hours at least of material that's going to be showing up on David's channel here soon.
We got about 2 minutes. You guys, we got 2 minutes. So go ahead and talk about that briefly. What happened in San Antonio.
Oh, yeah,
and kind of whet the appetite for the viewers so they can watch this here with our new shows.
Oh, yeah, sure. We spent the day out in San Antonio at the Alamo, and we brought camera and microphone. And not only did we have interesting conversations with people who came up to talk to us, both believers, non-believers, people on the fence, like David mentioned earlier, but we actually had not one, but 2 groups of street preachers that we took the initiative of approaching ourselves. And the first one went pretty productively. The second one, not so much, but it was interesting. It was a learning experience, and we've got video and audio of it all, and that'll be up on the channel soon. Yeah. And I look forward to the opportunity to do more, to have more engagement with the religious community and with street preachers and stuff like that.
So that's good, but just make sure your viewers understand. When we go out with our atheist sides, we're not looking for fights. We're not yelling at people. And so forth. We have friendly dialogue. We're putting a face on atheism.
Well, this is true, but sometimes depending on the attitude of the street preacher we're approaching, they can take it as an act of what did he call it? Aggression, exactly. And so you want to try to not let it escalate too much in that direction, and so we're working on it. We're getting better at it.
Yeah, we're learning.
Yeah.
So interesting footage, and you can see that one preacher. What did he call us? Every name in the book he was so angry. Sodomites. He called me a devil.
We're doing the work of the devil. Yeah,
it was pretty entertaining. But we had a lot of good dialogue, and you'll see the videos with individuals that are right there on the fence, believers, a lot of atheists who were very happy we were out there. So anyway.
Definitely.
All right, well, thanks for watching, and thanks for coming on, guys, and y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.